was 22, just a kid in the grand scheme of things, and I was at my last Halloween party at Nick's. Nick, my once best friend, didn't live to see the summer of 2024. He was taken by heroin. But before his life turned to tragedy, Nick's Halloween parties were legendary. His parents would always fly to New York for their annual soiree, leaving the house to Nick, who would transform it into something out of a horror movie. He was obsessed with Halloween, the kind of guy who would spend absurd amounts of money on grotesque props to turn even the most hardened stomach. He didn't just decorate, he created an experience. He built tall cardboard walls, carefully papered to create the illusion of a haunted maze to enthrall his guests with fear and wonder. I'll skip the debauchery. I don't need to paint you a picture of weed, rivers of beer, and bad decisions. We all knew what went on at Nick's parties. That night it was me, Nick, and a few others, Vinny, G, Joey, and Q, sitting in his room, passing the bong, when the first of two sharp, echoing thuds split the air below. Nick froze, the kind of freeze that tells you your brain is screaming, "Run! Hide!" But your body can't keep up. Then he lunged for the door with clumsy but quick steps. We screamed after him, panic spreading like wildfire. A muffled chaos of screams washed over us, a symphony of terror. Girls and boys screaming as if their lives depended on it. Nick staggered back, his face pale and his eyes wild, closing and slamming the door behind him with shaking hands. "Hide," he croaked. Just like that. No questions, no explanations. And somehow we understood. He turned off the light, ducking into the closet with Joey. I crouched under the bed next to Q, and Vinny crammed into the chest. We held our breaths as the distant hum of music below suddenly stopped. The silence that followed was not empty. It had weight. A man's voice came, deep and commanding, barking for everyone to be quiet. Someone screamed, a piercing sound that ripped through the guts. Then a third blow, and silence again. Now three voices were shouting over each other. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, clattered up the stairs, each step closer, more ominous. They stopped right at the bedroom door. The handle trembled, locked. The man behind me growled in frustration and slammed his shoulder against the door. The blows sent shivers down my spine. When brute force failed, the solution was simple: shoot. The shots shattered the lock, and the door creaked open. Through the thin cloth draped over the edge of the bed, I could see worn black boots and worn jeans moving across the floor. The man headed straight for the closet. A sound I'll never forget followed. Nick's voice, cracking with desperation, begging for his life, offering money, anything, just to get out alive. The intruder didn't hesitate. He ordered Nick to come downstairs. Joey, somehow unnoticed, remained hidden. The rest of us froze, scared, under the bed and in the trunk. Downstairs, Nick's voice mingled with the intruder's voices, low, insistent, almost inaudible. 20 minutes seemed like an eternity before we heard the front door close. Nick burst into the room, his face wet with sweat. "They're gone," he breathed. I didn't want to go downstairs, but I had to. What greeted me was an image that would forever remain etched in my memory. Jen and Robbie, lying in pools of crimson water, their heads smashed in. Blood spattered the floor like a hideous paint. The police arrived, their interest focused on the masked men wreaking havoc, not the smoke that still hung in the air. Nick told us later that there had been 4 intruders in all. Fedoras, vendetta masks, long coats and gloves. Their faces were a mystery. They demanded cash, $130,000, or something of value to line their pockets. When Nick couldn't do it, they made their threats a reality. The aftermath consumed Nick. First, he drowned his guilt in alcohol, then in harder things: meth, heroin. The following summer, he was gone. The last time I spoke to him, his voice was rough with regret. "I killed them," he whispered through his tears, clutching his pipe as if it were his lifeline. "I killed them." I tried to tell him otherwise, but it was no use. He was already a ghost, just waiting for his body to be found. It was my first Halloween in my own place. A modest corner house with peeling paint, a basement that always seemed colder than it should be, and no upstairs. It wasn't much, but it was mine, or half mine anyway, thanks to my parents footing part of the bill. That night, the glow of my TV filled the living room as I curled up on the worn-out couch, working my way through a lineup of old horror movies. It was just after 11 p.m. when the first knock came. I stood up halfway to the door before it hit me. Who the hell would be knocking this late? Trick-or-treaters? Not a chance. The thought of ding-dong ditchers flashed through my mind. I peeked through the window, catching a glimpse of an empty porch. Figures. Kids, I muttered to myself, smirking as I settled back into my spot. But the peace didn't last. Another knock, sharper this time. Get lost, I yelled, irritation lacing my voice. The pounding that followed wasn't just persistent, it was angry. I shot up from the couch, fury boiling over. Throwing the door open, I expected to find a couple of smirking brats, but the porch was empty. Again. My heart raced a little now, not from anger, but from the kind of unease that creeps in when things don't make sense. I grabbed my shoes and stepped outside. The night air was colder than I expected, and the street was dead silent. No kids laughing, no crunch of leaves under tiny sneakers. I searched the bushes, peered behind my car, even checked across the street. Nothing. Frustrated and more unnerved than I wanted to admit, I stomped back inside, locking the door. Double locking it, actually. Upstairs? No, I didn't have one. So I retreated to my bedroom, locking that door too. The pounding resumed, relentless and unnerving. Over the muffled sound of my TV, it seemed to grow louder, angrier. My mind began spinning stories. Maybe they weren't kids. Maybe they weren't playing games. I shook my head. Get a grip, I told myself. But when the knocking dragged on past 30 minutes, my confidence wavered. Eventually, exhaustion got the better of me, and I dozed off to the soft glow of the television. I woke up to more knocking. My body jerked upright, a cold sweat breaking across my forehead. The clock read 2 a.m., but it wasn't the front door this time. The sound was closer. Too close. It was my bedroom door. Every nerve in my body lit up, and my mind screamed to move, to do something, anything. I stumbled around the room, grabbing at random objects for a weapon, a lamp, a shoe, even a pair of scissors. My hands were shaking so badly I could hardly hold them. Whoever was on the other side wasn't trying to be subtle. The knob rattled violently, then came the thuds, deliberate and heavy, like they were throwing their weight into it. My breath came in shallow gasps. These weren't kids. Panic gave birth to a desperate idea. I lunged for the speakers, fumbling to connect my phone. My fingers danced across the screen as I typed, "gunshot sound effect." The first crack of the fake shot thundered through the room. I paused it, my voice trembling, but loud. "That was a warning shot. Next one goes through your skull." The pounding stopped. Footsteps, hurried and chaotic, stomped away. Two sets of them, fading into the distance. I sat frozen, my heart hammering against my ribs. After what felt like an eternity, I crept to the door, easing it open. The house was silent again, save for the faint creak of the wind outside. But the front door was wide open, swaying gently in the breeze. I slammed it shut, bolted the locks, and called the police. When they arrived, there wasn't much to tell. No sign of forced entry, no fingerprints, no suspects. Just the lingering chill of what could have been. I've never been much of a Halloween person. Growing up, I wasn't one of those kids with a pack of friends to roam the neighborhood with. By the time I hit 10, I couldn't tag along with my mom anymore without feeling like a total loser. Halloween just wasn't my thing. Last year, I was 14. My little sister, 8 years old and still in love with the whole trick-or-treating deal, went out with my mom. My best friend Steve already had plans that didn't include me. That left me at home, alone. But when my mom asked if I could stay back to hand out candy, I felt a weird, small rush of satisfaction, like I had a purpose. I wasn't going to be the kid wandering the streets solo, looking pathetic. I had a job to do. They left at 6, and I settled into the couch in the living room. AMC was running its annual scary movie marathon, so I had Halloween on in the background. The doorbell rang occasionally, and I'd toss candy into outstretched hands, but it was quiet enough for me to relax. The peace didn't last. The first ring of the kitchen phone shattered the quiet like a firecracker. I jumped, cursing the ancient thing for being set so loud. When I picked up, no one spoke. There were faint noises, fumbling maybe, background sounds you'd hear when someone's holding a phone. I said hello 5 times before whoever it was hung up. My first thought? Some jerk pulling a Halloween prank. I let it go, figuring it wasn't worth getting worked up over. The second call came minutes later. Same unknown number. This time I decided to play along. I picked up and waited. The same faint breathing. "All right, Steve, I know it's you," I said, my voice steady even though my hands weren't. Click. They hung up again. I told myself it was nothing. A dumb joke, nothing more. But the unease had started creeping in, slow and steady like a shadow in the corner of the room. I kept one eye on the screen, trying to enjoy the next movie, but my thoughts kept drifting back to the phone. It rang again, louder somehow, like the sound was worming its way into my bones. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity, or stupidity, got the better of me. "Hello," I said, my voice sharper this time. For a long time there was nothing but breathing. Then, in a voice so low and guttural it didn't seem real, came the words, "I'll be paying you a visit tonight." The line went dead before I could respond. My pulse was hammering in my ears, but I wasn't going to let them win. "Fuck it off," I muttered into the silence, slamming the phone back onto the receiver. That was it. I wasn't answering again. For a while things calmed. No more calls, no doorbell, just the comforting hum of the TV. I was starting to feel like I could shrug it off, blame it on some idiot with too much time on their hands. But then, without warning, the power went out. The TV cut to black. The lights died. The room plunged into darkness so complete it felt alive. I froze, every instinct screaming at me to stay still. That's when the pounding started. The sound came from the front door, heavy and insistent, like whoever was out there was done playing games. I stood up, my legs trembling, and stumbled toward the door. Then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of laughter. My breath caught in my throat. I knew that laugh. When I cracked open the door, there he was, Steve, standing there grinning like an idiot. I wanted to kill him.